Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next module. This is module 3 in our group theory and practice class. And this module is going to focus on group cohesion and integration. Cohesion is really about all the different therapeutic factors together and the interpersonal learning and all those aspects of group where we are looking at the factors, how the group is held together. And integration here means that we are trying in this module to think about how to integrate all the different therapeutic factors that we talked about in the previous modules. And not only how we work with integrating those factors, but we are also looking at the parallel process, what's happening in your life uh, um, as group therapists on your path becoming group leaders, group facilitators, and how you integrate all the different skills you have learned or you have acquired throughout your life, throughout your training, and how you add these specific elements that you are learning in the group theory and practice class, how you integrate all those, and how you are becoming a group facilitator. So let's look at the slides. Um, First of all, I'm inviting you to reflect on your group experiences. Of course, if you are leading or you have been leading groups, you will be thinking about those. And I would encourage you to think about those real group therapy experiences, either if you're a member or if you were the facilitator. Think about these ideas that we are talking about in this class, how they are relevant to your experience, and what would you do now if you were now leading that group or if you were a member in that group. But we can also think about various other groups that you have lived in throughout your life, because we human beings, we live in groups, we socialize in groups, and so all of us know exactly how it feels to be in various different group settings. We could start, of course, with the family of origin, and you could think about your childhood, how you were as a child growing up in your family, but also how is it now if you are still in contact with your family members, when if you get together for holidays or family reunions, how is it different? How is it the same as back then when you were growing up? We are thinking about classroom setups, either when you were a kid or now later in your life, thinking about summer camps, again, mostly about growing up experiences, but it can be also if you worked in a summer camp as a counselor, how was it different? At work, if you have worked in larger companies, for example, it's a very different group experience um, than in smaller companies. And also the you can think about the differences in the group setup based on the environment, the larger environment, the work environment, how it affected the smaller group experience. And of course, we are also in groups and in other social settings, like when hobbies, if we are dancing or hiking, or various other things that we do in our free time. You could think about other types of groups that are not specifically set up as groups, but if you are just in a coffee place and in a cafe and you are there for let's say you're doing your homework and you're there with your laptop, maybe there are other people who are in that cohort with you just for that time being at that Starbucks or wherever you are sitting, and how, if there is any interaction, verbal or nonverbal interaction among the members, or any other factors that we are talking about here, how they relate to those experiences. And then, again, as you were maybe a part of other sorts of groups and marching band, sorority, fraternity in your college years. If you have kids, then you can think about the playground not only as thinking back to when you were a kid, but also now as you are one of the parents. So how the parent subgroup is different from the kids subgroup on that playground. We'll talk more about subgroups later. So I'm just inviting you to reflect on these experiences and start thinking about the therapeutic factors that we are discussing here in this class, how they affect our behaviors in those various group situations. So a few things I want to say about group cohesion, besides the textbook, of course, the Yalom textbook that has the whole chapter on group cohesion. Um, and I do think that he mentions most of these things that I'm talking about here. So, in group therapy, what we are talking about is the group cohesion that's analog, or it's similar, it's parallel to the the relationship between the therapist and the client in the individual therapy setup. But here in group, if you are thinking about the relationships that are relevant in the here and now in this group room, so there will be relationships among the members, just one-on-one among the members, but based on the number of group members, you will have, if there are 8 people, so you will have 7 different relationships with the members, and you will have yet another type of relationship between the therapist and yourself. And then you will also have a relationship to subgroups. So if you can relate to a certain number of people in this group, but not necessarily to all of them, uh, then uh, then that will be a different kind of relationship as your relationship to the other group members. And these can be cultural, ethnic subgroupings, but it can be also um, various random um, factors that contribute to subgroups. For example, I was once at a lecture where the group leader, um, who works a lot with subgrouping, she identified all the people. It was a workshop, it wasn't an ongoing process group. So there were several people who were late, and and when each one of them came into the room, she named them, that you are the first person who is part of that subgroup of those who are being late. And then the next person came in, and by that time the first person was sitting, so this next person who was late didn't know that he was not the only one who was late. So the facilitator told him that you are the second member of the subgroup of those who are being late. And I think there were maybe 5 people. It was a lecture for maybe 30 people. So 5 people were late, and they created this subgroup. Um, and if it's really a random setup, because any number of people could be late, or any a different subset of people could be late. So those are just some ideas that you can think about, how you relate to your subgroup. And you of course can belong to various subgroups. So you do belong to various subgroups within the group, and so that is also yet another relationship in this group setup. But also, so not only you have these different relationships, but also the importance of the group cohesion in group therapy is very similar to the importance of the relationship with the therapist in the individual setup. I'd like to mention a few more factors on this slide, on this next slide, when we are thinking about group cohesion. So one of the first things that I cannot emphasize enough, that it is very important that everyone feels safe in a group therapy setting. For example, at the initial meeting, it is important that each person would say something, they would connect at least with one other person. And that will help every single person to feel connected to at least one more member, just by the sheer fact that they said something, they stepped into the group. And then there are different levels of comments, disclosures that people make in group. And usually there is a way you feel that a person arrived or is now included in the group. And that's why it is very important that we appreciate silences, and we appreciate people who talk more, or those who talk less. But it's really crucial to keep an eye as a facilitator on that. Each one person would have some kind of connection, some kind of sharing of herself or himself in this setting. And so one of the important things is really the first session when you are establishing this, you start establishing these relationships. And if there is a person who doesn't say anything at the first session, let's say it's a weekly therapy group, there is some chance that that person will not return. So you want to make sure that they were heard, that their needs were met in that first session, and then of course throughout the meetings. And we focus on members' individual experience in group through paying attention to group as a whole. Again, I think this is a very important basic tenet of group therapy that talks about the therapeutic effects on each individual. We are not there in this group therapy environment to have the group to become a healthier group. As like in, for example, in the couples counseling, we always say that the relationship is the client and not the individuals. In group therapy, we actually say that the individuals are the clients. We do want to see that each individual will overcome difficulties and will benefit individually from this group setup. But what I'm trying to talk about when talking about group cohesion and interpersonal learning and integration of all of these therapeutic factors, that we are managing the therapeutic environment as group as a whole. We are looking at the group level factors. Yet our goal is to help each individual to grow and to overcome their difficulties. So I think that is an important point. And it is an important aspect of group cohesion because we need the group cohesion. We work really hard on getting that group become cohesive, but in order for the individuals to benefit from it. Once we were able to create that safety in the group room, it will lead to looking at our differences, the individual characteristics of the different members, and it will further increase group cohesion and intimacy when we are able to do that. And I think it is again a very important aspect of group therapy that first we need to create that safety. And again, we will talk more about it when we are talking about the stages of group development. The initial stage of group development is when the group finds the common factors among the members. People enter the group with some kind of anxiety or some kind of apprehension. Do I belong? Can I belong? Will I belong? Or will I be again thrown out as in various other group experiences I had before? But so the first stage is when we are drawing everybody in together, we are finding the common aspects. And when there is enough safety, that's when we can relax and actually look at our differences, which is very important. Because if we are just all a mass of similar people and we don't see beyond that, we will not really get very far. We'll not be able to look at our personality, our personal characteristics, and things that that are our strengths and that are our challenges. So it is important that we are able to look at those differences. Individuals are more able to focus on their self-understanding using others' input as their subjective voice growing stronger in their self. That's our next point on this slide. And what it means is that when we are hearing other people's voices and reflections on us, then we will be able to have a stronger understanding of who we are. So that's again another way of using other people and the group cohesion and the interpersonal learning in order to help ourselves to find our our individual challenges, our individual growing edges. We need the other people and their points of view and their sharing of their feedback so that we would understand who we are, as opposed to if there is no safety, and we need to be vigilant and look out for ourselves all the time, very often what happens is that people's self-confidence is less than ideal, and 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 we are trying to, when we are in a situation that we are not sure about ourselves and about our environment, very often we are trying to figure out what other people think about us, and then of course our individual reaction can be different to that. Some people will end up trying to prove to others that they are worthy, or they will become defensive. There are very different personal reactions to that, but there is this tendency that people are judging themselves based on the other people's perspective. Yet it's very different from this setup in the group, and there is enough safety, and we are really able to listen to those other people's perspective about ourselves. We will, as a result, grow in our self understanding and our self respect, and will become more aware and maybe stronger individuals as the result. So again, it's the individual change as a result of the group cohesion. I'd like to talk a little bit about acceptance. The ongoing solid peer acceptance in group is a new vital experience. When group members see that their peers are accepting them, uh, that leads to, again, the feeling of safety in this group environment, and usually this is a really healing uh, emotional experience, because these are the kind of experiences that we had somewhere else, maybe in our family of origin or in other social setups, when we had to fight for ourselves, when we had to prove ourselves. But here, when even if let's say there is something embarrassing that I as a group member have done, um, or I did something that um, it wasn't perfect, or it was really um, like it was an let's say it was an embarrassing thing that I did, or I shared something really scary about myself, um, either my anger or something that I have done, which I feel objectively and subjectively that I deserve to be punished, or that I have been receiving punishment before, for the same thing. And now I'm sharing it here in the group. And really, when the group together, we are looking at all the aspects, and at depth, what might have been the reasons why I have done that or said a certain thing. Uh, these people will not turn against me. They will try to understand my experience. Um, let's say if I attacked somebody in the group verbally, or if I hurt their feelings, in the right group therapy environment, it will be managed in a way that that person will be there the next time. And I will see that I didn't create um, a, a really unreversible havoc in my environment with my actions. We can actually process it, we can actually work through it. And that's what we are doing in the group environment. We are working through these experiences, and that results in this peer acceptance of me with all my different parts. Acceptance of self and others creates experience of mature interdependence, and so that's what happens in an ongoing group experience, that uh, I am able to accept myself, and others are able to accept me, and through that system of acceptances, each individual will grow more independent but also interdependent, also understanding what is it I can get from others, what is it that I can I can receive from others, and what is it that I can give to others. And eventually, we'll all have this solid sense of self. I will have a solid sense of self, but also other group members will feel a solid sense of self, yet we will not shy away from receiving what we can receive from the group environment. And hopefully that the hope is that we'll be able to take that outside into our life, and we will not be dependent on others, but we'll be able to receive and accept what we can gain from our social interactions. As the third point on this slide, I did say diversity is crucial in groups. Yeah, and in a homogeneous group, it's more difficult to see the differences. Yet, of course, there are always differences, but the more diversity there is in a group, the more this process uh, will be accelerated, that we all have our individualities, and we will grow in that experience of accepting ourselves in others' eyes, and we'll be able to accept others, and will accept where people are coming from. Um, and again, I think it is where uh, group therapy can go into that spirit or spiritual goals can be achieved, or maybe this is the road to where these transpersonal needs can be achieved in through group therapy. I also want to mention that group therapy is not always comfortable. I don't want to sound like this is a process through which we always feel wonderful and comfortable, and we um, just love and accept from the beginning our differences. But I think that's very important to realize um, how conflict is welcomed and processed. And that's what I was talking about when I mentioned that we work through these conflicts. And we actually want to put some emphasis on these conflicts. And if anybody feels any hostility, either within themselves, either towards themselves, towards somebody else who might be sitting there in the group, or more in general terms, hostility is welcome to the degree that the individual who feels it is ready to process it and work with it and see where it comes from and what is the experience of that the hostility that creates the conflict that might create some fear in other group members. So it's very important to name these, and at times it can be uncomfortable in the group setting. But again, it comes back to the facilitator's ability to hold that space and create enough safety in the room that we as a group can work through those uncomfortable feelings. And it is a very important fact that if hostility or conflict is not brought up, yet if people are feeling certain feelings like that, it was time in the development of group cohesion and intimacy. So really, if there is something in the room that's not talked about, no matter what will happen, things will not develop. The group will not mature further. And if somebody is able to see it and bring it into awareness and talk about it, even if first people don't know the words for it, even if we don't yet know what is it about, but it is possible to layer by layer get to it and understand what's happening. And once the group processes it and talks about it and works through it, then that will be an experience for this group, that they will understand how they were able to do that together. Everybody had an input into this conflict resolution of sorts. And by itself, that ability to carry through and everybody survives, that nobody feels too strongly that they are not accepted in the group, or they're a certain part of themselves are not accepted in the group, in which case sometimes people would leave a group. if this group is able to work through it without people leaving, that's what will create a great degree of intimacy in this group. Because we as people, we as social beings, we need that experience that we are able to manage and hold the different hostilities that are arising, and we can work through it as a community, as a social group, or as a group, any sort of group, which we are practicing here in process groups. I mentioned this earlier. The next slide is about joining and subgrouping. As the group is going through any sort of work, but especially if the group is going through some difficult feelings, difficult interactions, it's very important that you, as a facilitator, you help people join each other. It is an important building block of group cohesion. That if I said something that's either controversial or it was difficult for me to say it, and if everybody is quiet in the room, I will probably feel pretty bad about myself, and oh, why did I say it? And I might be really ashamed of what I just said, or even what I thought. So it is very important that you, as a facilitator, you would encourage people to join each other, and at some point you will create this group um, atmosphere, this group culture, that people will right away think when they hear something that they can join, so they will name that, because they are, if somebody said something that I could join with, I can say that I feel similarly to you, and then I would name in what is it that I feel similarly to you. And then if my experience is somewhat different from this other person, which most likely it will be, then my job is also to say that a part of me, or partially, I feel similarly to you, but here there's this other part of me, that, or this other part of my experience or my thoughts or my feelings about it. And then yet another person can join me in either of these statements that I made. And so again, this will become a group-wide conversation, and it will keep the group cohesion, the development of group cohesion becoming stronger. And once I join somebody, that's how we create a subgroup. And even if not everybody will join this person, even if a small subgroup, let's say 2 or 3 people, are in the same boat in a certain way, there will be a strength in that. And then it might be easier to relate to other group members who think or feel differently, especially if it's a heated situation. And so eventually the group will become like a family. And with this point, I meant that a family that's, I don't want to say dysfunctional family, but hopefully it will be a functional family, yet with lots of different opinions and different personalities. Yet we will know how we are moving forward with a certain amount of group cohesion, that in a way we appreciate each other enough that we can move forward um, without denying or ignoring our differences. We'll be aware of our differences, but there is enough in us that brings us forward in a way that uh, there is enough intimacy and cohesion that we want to be together. Now, about the process of integration, here is the point about that I said earlier, that people stay with each other even after embarrassing self-disclosures and disagreements. These are healing opportunities. These are corrective emotional experiences. Um, so I already talked about this, that it can be embarrassing self-disclosures, but it can be also really angry parts of the self, um, thoughts or actions. But what the healing opportunity here is, that the group is not going to dissolve. People will not run away or blame me, but um, will find a working through stage. And next time, and the next week, and the week after that, people will come back, and the therapist will be there for me and for others, and I will be able to stay there, and I don't have to disappear. Authentic relating and accepting parts of self that others model in accepting. I think it's yet another way of saying the same thing, that when we are relating to each other in an authentic way and we accept parts of other people that they are not able to accept themselves, if I am struggling with parts of myself that I feel really ashamed of, um, once I talk about those things and people, I see how these my other fellow group members are able to accept me together with those parts, they are really modeling for me how to be able to do that for myself. I think this is what Yalom said somewhere, that he called it obstruction removal. And I like that phrase. It's instead of teaching new skills to your group members as a group facilitator, what really you are doing, you are trying to remove all the various different obstructions towards um, like a holistic self, because we all have our potential inside us to be healthy, fully functioning individuals. And probably throughout our lives, we met these different experiences that created obstructions in fully um, experiencing ourselves and expressing ourselves. And so instead of sitting here and teaching skills to our group members, our role as group facilitators to find, to see where are those obstructions and then help people to remove those obstructions for themselves. And these, in some of the group therapy literature, especially with modern analytic group therapy, it's these are called resistances, or sometimes these are called defenses. Uh, Depending what literature you are reading, this will be a little bit, the definition will be a little bit different. Um, but but those obstructions that Yalom is talking about, they are the our defenses, are resistances to work, to fully work and express ourselves. And there will be some extra readings about this, because this can be actually um, a very important skill set, how to recognize those resistances. um, yeah, these are like I think I already gave you before some articles by Ormond, by Lou Ormond. He has a wonderful book, and each chapter works with a different skill, a different phenomena in group therapy, with lots of examples from his own groups that deal with understanding the transferences and the resistances in the group. And there are individual resistances and group-wide resistances that sometimes is very hard to recognize, because you, as the facilitator, you are sitting with the group, you are sitting in it, and that's why it becomes so much part of the makeup of the group that you don't even realize what's happening. And that's one of the big aspects of how group therapy facilitation is an art, because you want to recognize those as they are happening in the here and now, and you want to work with it and understand that those are resistances, and those are those very obstacles that you want to address, and help people work through that. Again, in the previous lecture, I was talking about how it's easier for a group therapist than an individual therapist, but yet maybe that is true, that you have more time to sit back and watch and listen what's happening in the room, but you are still in it. So it's still a lot of work and skillful observation to see what are these resistances. And I mentioned my third point earlier again, that individual results happen while working as a group as a whole. Um, and I think that's just an important aspect of group work, that we are working towards the individual's therapeutic goals. And the last two slides here, I wanted to mention that different styles of groups emphasize different therapeutic factors. And the next one will be about different stages of group development emphasize different factors. Let's go back here. Different groups emphasize different therapeutic factors. And what I'm talking about is how psychoeducational groups, support groups, peer groups, process groups, therapy groups, they're all working with different therapeutic factors. So when you had the list of therapeutic factors, um, you want to think about them, how on which ones you will put more emphasis when you are leading a different kind of group. So in psychoeducational groups, your the more emphasized therapeutic factors will be different from a, a general interpersonal process group when you work when so in one of them you will be working more with conflict and self growth, whereas in a psychoeducational group, you are going to teach a certain skill or a certain idea. For in like a CBT group, you will teach people how to differentiate between their thoughts and feelings. It's very different from working in the here and now in an interpersonal process group and working with what arises, what kind of conflicts, let's say, arise among people. And I thought that you can also think about it similar to the hierarchy of needs. So in the psychoeducational groups, uh, you psychoeducational groups, support groups, skills groups, counseling groups, then therapy groups and process groups, you will be it will be working with a different level of functioning and a different level of needs, basic needs, or more the self actualization kind of needs. And then the different stages of, let's say, a process group or a therapy group will again emphasize different factors, different therapeutic factors. In the initial stage, you will see more of the imitation, the imitative behavior. Certain clients will really look up to the therapist, and they will try to model their behavior or thinking pattern after the therapist. There will be a lot of therapeutic effect of universality when people come in to this group and start seeing how I'm not alone, how other people are similar to me. Again, I already talked about that quite a bit. Then in the middle and working stages of group development, group cohesiveness is a very important factor. That's what we are building. The corrective recapitulation of primary family group, that's what's really developing, and that the group members are using to feel those transferences and feel those projections and working through those. Interpersonal learning is very important. That's a very basic factor in the working stages of group therapy. And then towards the end, in the termination stages, we feel a lot of the group cohesion and that level of intimacy that developed in this group. That's what will be the most memorable therapeutic factor at that stage. And then existential factors, of course, they come in throughout the all the stages, but at the end, at the termination, at the saying goodbye stage, um, issues around death and dying can come up, and other existential factors. So again, these are just a few examples. This is definitely not a full list, but I just wanted you to start thinking about when you are leading different groups, psychoeducational support or process groups, that you would think about that not all the factors that we learned from these first few chapters of the Yalom book will always be present, but there will be ones that come to the foreground and then some that will stay in the background. And that's the end of this module 3 presentation. I hope that it was easy to follow and it added a little bit to your readings. In summary, I just want to say I wanted to point out three things. The group therapeutic factors play flexible roles. So when you are thinking about integrating all these therapeutic factors, please be flexible and think what fits and what fits more and what fits less. Group and the members all go through stages of healing. So um, we'll again talk more about the stages of group development, but again, in the group cohesion, integration of all the factors, just think about that uh, how again different factors come to the forefront and stay in the background. Um, and consider these factors in your group work. Please think about them when, if you are leading groups today, or if you have led groups before, if you participated in some groups, uh, think about those real life examples from your own life, and consider them. It will be easier. They will be more real to think about them. And then please share your insights with the rest of us here in this class. Use the various types of uh, options for that in the online account. Thank you again, and we'll see you very soon.